from backstage at Rock Island in Key West, Florida. And here with me right now are guitar players of 2 of the 4 bands performing here on day number 1. From the band Honeymoon Suite, we welcome Derry. Gerhan. Even Paul didn't know that. And he's known you forever.
It's okay. It's a bad name.
Derry Gerhan.
How are you?
Did you ever have anybody label or anybody say you got to come up with a stage name? You got to be like Derry Stevens or something.
I should have. I had a guy call me Derby Gretchen one time. That's how bad it got.
Just as long as they call you, right?
Yeah.
Derry, of course, is the guitarist in Honeymoon Suite, and a guy with a much easier last name to say. Paul Dean from Loverboy is here. Good to see you, Paul.
I have 3 first names and 3 last names. So I guess it's kind of like a superhero, like Spider-Man or all those guys. They always had first names, but their first name was the last name as well.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. Now, I was saying to you before, while you were up on stage getting ready to play tonight, Loverboy was supposed to play this last year, and it didn't happen. And now you're back, of course, to make that up for this year. Last year, it was you guys were still having issues with COVID and concerns with COVID, right?
We were spooked by COVID. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. I'm of advanced age, so I'm particularly prone. Actually, I got it last summer, and I did survive because I'm living proof. Here I am. But,
right.
So, but that was, we're all vaxxed now and all that stuff.
Yeah. And for both of your bands, I've had a chance to see you guys. So Loverboy, I just saw you recently at the Sands, which was the event in Cancun that I'm a co-host of, and that was a phenomenal performance. And Derry, I've seen Honeymoon Suite. Well, you guys did that event as well. I saw you play that pool stage that time.
We did.
But you've also been on the Monsters of Rock cruise, which I've seen you play that. And you were saying before that, I get around. Well, you guys certainly get around too. You've been on all sorts of varied events and festivals. And it's interesting because for both of your bands, you guys are very comfortable, it seems, slotting in with any kind of festival. Like if it's an 80s theme thing, if it's a mixed lineup, if it's a bunch of pop acts and rock acts, whatever it is, it seems like for the music you've both made with your respective bands, it fits in quite well. Are you guys, Derry, are you comfortable doing all these different sort of events?
I'm just happy to be down here playing festivals and doing all these things. And we still got a great fan base. And I think it's the catalog, it's the songs, like with Loverboy, come on, that's what people come to these shows for. These bands have great songs. So they're slotting us in. We're kind of melodic, but we're heavy to a certain extent. Sure. And I think it's a great fit.
Yeah, it really is. Paul, for you, over the years of playing with Loverboy, have you gone on to bills? Not saying this one is one at all, but have you gone into festivals or bills where you're like, are we going to work in that thing with what's around us?
Why are we here? Yeah, a few of those. And going on last, which is even worse. It's tough. It really is. It's like metal bands and serious hair metal bands, and we're from that era, but we're not really. We're more of a pop band,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for both of you guys, I've always looked at you both as just being rock bands. Yeah. Maybe hard rock bands, but hard rock bands. I
think Derry and I we're both metal wannabes.
Is that right?
Exactly. It's like I've been scared being on some bills. People are going to pelt us with things, but usually after the show, you turned out to be pleasantly surprised. People are very forgiving, and you get in front of people, and they're like, "Wow, they really liked us." But then they like the metal band as well.
Yeah.
They're all music fans.
Yeah.
I think that's where both our bands are able to fit in. It's with the guitars, even though the vocals are pretty melodic and some of the lyrics are kind of girl-based, a lot of them. But I think we fit in through the guitar, the sound of the guitar, the crunch, because we're both crunch guys, right?
Yeah.
Not all the time, but we love to crunch.
Well, I told you when I just saw you recently at the event in Cancun, that's a varied lineup. So that's got everything from Culture Club to Loverboy to pop acts to hip hop to everything. And look, I'm unabashedly a rock guy to my core. So at that particular event, I don't host all the bands because they appropriately put the hosts that are more aligned with that music. But the rock guys, that's my thing. So I went up to Paul the last night, and I saw Paul, and he was standing behind his amp, and he's getting ready to play. And I go, Paul, I said, I've been waiting all week for the riff and Turn Me Loose. I said, I need that bad, and I need it loud tonight.
And what was my response? Not right now. Right now, I'm busy. I'm trying to tune my guitar. Get away from me. Who are you?
Exactly. But you delivered it. You brought it, and it was a great set. I guess I'll start with you, Derry, with Honeymoon Suite. I mean, the story of your band from a U.S. perspective, and that's a really important thing to say because you're both Canadian bands, but I've had our mutual friend Todd Kearns. We've had so many conversations and radio shows about this, where there's bands that did super well in Canada but didn't do anything in America and are unknown in America. But with Honeymoon Suite, you're certainly known here, and you certainly had a couple big hits. Certainly, New Girl Now was huge. Feel It Again is, and being in rock radio my whole life, I played all those songs constantly. So you had a good degree of success. When you look back on the band and its origins in the 80s, do you have a reason why it didn't go further than that, do you think, in America? Do you feel like it should have ascended to higher and the record should have done better afterwards?
Of course. I mean, any band would think that. I think our third record wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be. The first two albums we were on an upward swing and had some great success on. Third record did okay, but we didn't have that, Living on a Prayer or, one of those songs or Turn Me Loose. We never had that big U.S. single, and I think that kind of hurt us, but we soldiered on and here we are. We just kept doing what we do.
That's the key. Here we are. We're still here. Both bands are still
Mm-hmm.
here, and here in a beautiful sunshine too.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Derry, did Honeymoon Suite ever break up? Did you ever end? I mean, I know there's been a lot of lineup changes, right? But you're a constant, and you've been there pretty much since day one. But
Exactly. When the 90s came along, it kind of killed us all, our kind of bands, when grunge came in. So
Right.
we kind of stepped back for a while, and at one point it's just down to Johnny and I, because there were no shows. Nobody was interested. So we took a few lean years there, and then we started to go back out with other players, because Dave and Gary left for a while, and it was okay. And then about 10 years ago, I said, I want to call these guys up. I want the original guys if they'll come back. And they did come back, and it's been amazing ever since. We've been just getting better and better shows the whole time, because the classic rock has seemed to come back with all these bands. And we've got pretty much the original band, like Loverboy too. That's what I love about them, is we got original guys, and nobody plays our stuff as well as we do, because these guys played on the albums, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. When you wrote New Girl Now, because you did write that song, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any vibe in you that was going to become such a breakthrough song for the band, and that it would break the band in America?
No, you never do. I mean, I wrote that song in my kitchen when I was in college, and it took about half an hour. It was just because I was listening to the Cars at the time, the first couple of Cars albums, and I loved their vibe. So
Right.
I was kind of vibing off their sound, and it was kind of a song I wrote in college. I put it away, I recorded it, and then when I joined Honeymoon Suite, we started to play originals, and I played it for Johnny. He says, we have to do that. And then it's a long story after that, but it's one of those songs I really didn't think much of, but that happens all the time, and it was the big hit.
Yeah, it was huge. Now, Paul, Loverboy, my gosh, tons of hits here in America, and I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin to talk about the records, but you had said to me when we were talking about doing this today that you and Derry have some history, and I believe both of you guys were in bands prior to Derry, you with Honeymoon Suite, and Paul, you with Loverboy. Paul, you were in a band called Street Heart, right?
Correct.
And because Kearns has told me about that, and he loved the band. Where did Loverboy come together out of, like, was Mike Reno in a different band as well? Like, we here in America, we know the first record, we know all the hits, but the origins of the band, how it came together. Can you give us some insights on that?
Yeah, Mike was in a Toronto band called Moxie, and he was having some problems with his management. It just wasn't happening, and he bailed on it. But I had the same problem too with my manager, but they bailed on me. So we were both kind of freelancing at the time. And I met Mike. He was working construction in Calgary. He was hauling. He told me I think it was wheelbarrows full of gravel up ramps on a building site in January in Calgary. That was his gig. And he came down to jam with a friend of his. I was playing bass in his band, and at the time, and I heard Mike sing, and that was the origin of the band. I heard him sing, and it's just blew me away.
How quickly did the first record come together? As far as material, was the chemistry there immediately?
I think so. I mean, that's one word that was used. The second week we played in Vancouver, some somebody came up and said, the one thing about you guys is you really have chemistry. I didn't really think much about it, but I think that's true. We had it right from the get-go, and it still do. It's amazing. Every night, it's like a brand new night. Every night we play.
Yeah, Mike's still killing it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. I mean, having seen both bands live recently, both of you guys, I mean, I can honestly say it's amazing how great the bands still sound, and that's a huge thing, is the singers being able to hold up vocally, and clearly Mike does, and clearly in Honeymoon Suite.
Yeah, Johnny.
Johnny.
You know, to his point, I'd been in other bands before Honeymoon Suite around Toronto, smaller bands, but things didn't happen until I met Johnny, and that is a light bulb moment. You heard Mike sing. I've been looking for a singer. That's the hardest thing to find, is that front man. Helps if he's good looking and he's got a voice. When I met Johnny, I heard him sing, I like, bang, I know we got something here.
Yeah. Paul, the band you were in prior, Street Heart, why do you think that band didn't break into America? Because that's a band that's completely unknown in the U.S. I mean, it didn't move the needle at all here. What was the story of that band?
Well, we only had one album, and I think the tunes were just not quite radio friendly at the time, you know. And I didn't know how to do it really until I was by myself, let go from street art, and that was a real inspiration for me. That really woke me up. Something changed for me, and I just got this stream of poppiness came pouring out. You know, The Kid Is Hot and tunes like that. Mm-hmm. It's I don't know.
Was Street Heart a harder edge band than Loverboy was? When you say Loverboy became more poppy,
I look at you might agree with this, Derry. I look at Street Heart as being the Led Zeppelin of Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so it was like guitar, bass, drums, riff rock.
Amazing keyboard player too, but it was just in its dynamics more than anything. Mm-hmm. Serious dynamics. But yeah, it just didn't have the hooks. You know, there was a couple of tunes on there that still get played on the radio, but on the radio, or internet, I should say.
Right. I got to seek that record out. I've never really heard it, but I know that there's a song, "Dancing with Danger," that Ace Frehley covered. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm not aware of that. I wasn't involved in that.
Oh, you weren't? That's not one of your songs. So that was after a different version of the band at that point?
If I can put a little plug in for Street Art,
yeah.
we did a reunion in '95, and we played a week in a club, and we recorded it, and I took it and mastered it, and we released it. It's called One Night, One Take, and it's probably everywhere, you know, and it's really cool. It's live, like no overdubs, nothing, just live.
Yeah,
and it's pretty cool.
Derry, your history before Honeymoon Suite, you said you were in a couple bands. Anyone that made a record or anything like that in Canada that would be known that we didn't know about here, like Street Art?
I did. I was with a punk new wave band called Steve Blimke and the Reason from Toronto, back when new wave, you know, XTC and the Police in the early days. Yeah. I was kicking around Toronto when I first moved there, and I joined a band, and Dave was the drummer, Dave Betts from Honeymoon Suite, and we did a couple albums with them. It was just quirky, you know, new wave stuff, but it didn't last. It just didn't have the, you know, the commerciality. So that broke up, and then a while after that, I met Johnny and found the sound that I wanted, and found the band I wanted to write for.
Yeah, and Paul, you had said to me that the two of you have some mutual history and connection. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, Derry has this guitar that's being built by Godin out of Montreal, a signature guitar, and I called him up and I said, I'm thinking of doing the same thing. How do I get in with the Godin guys? And he sent me all the deets, and I got a hold of him, and that's the guitar I'm playing now, is the one they built for me. So yeah, we both have the same. It's very similar guitars, but just enough difference. You know, you'll hear it tonight. You'll hear the difference in the sound.
Yeah. Have you guys done a lot together in terms of touring together? Has Honeymoon Suite and Loverboy toured together much?
We've done a bunch of shows over the years. Every once in a while, yeah, we end up in the same bill.
Yeah, and the thing that obviously the other common thread beyond the fact that you're both Canadian bands is the fact that you guys both benefited greatly from something that we used to have that used to actually really move the needle, called MTV, you know, and that's where so many people first discovered the music and the band. And for you guys in Honeymoon Suite, Derry, I mean, you came a little bit, I think, after the start of MTV. You weren't right there at the beginning, but pretty early on, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was so huge for us. There was much music in Canada, and our first album came out, we did video, and then MTV was just starting up, back when they were playing videos. And the fact that they played the New Girl Now video on MTV, like, a lot, that broke us into the States, got us tours. That was huge for us.
Yeah, and Feel It Again was big, if I recall, on MTV as well. That was a really big song.
Yep.
And Paul, you guys lived on MTV. I was even thinking of songs that maybe weren't as big, but the videos were big, like Hot Girls in Love was, I remember, on MTV constantly. Being in Canada, I don't think you didn't get MTV in Canada, right? The U.S. version?
No, but we had much music. But we were toured in the States by then, so
Right.
we were aware of it. I saw MTV the first time I was in Wichita in my hotel room, and it came on. I'm flicking around, and there's this music channel, and watch one video, and 5 hours later, I couldn't believe how great it was. And I think the next week, our manager calls up and says Columbia Records wants to do a video with you guys in New York City. So we did Turn Me Loose there. It was like right off the bat. It was like probably, I swear, a week after I knew about MTV.
Yeah, well, the first Loverboy album was it 1980? What year was it?
Something like that, yeah.
Around 80, and I think
It's
MTV...
too far back, man.
But I think MTV started around 81. So if I'm not mistaken, like you guys were right at the core, because the Loverboy videos were among some of the earliest things I remember seeing. I mean, back then in the U.S., MTV wasn't on in every house. Every system didn't have it. So I used to drive to my friend's house, which is about 20 minutes away, and we just sit there waiting for a rock video to come on. We just sit there and like, well, that's cool. And, it was like this appointment thing that I actually drove to see. And so many people obviously got turned on, and it moved the needle for so many. But they really embraced you guys. I mean, it wasn't like a one-time deal, Paul, where it's like, oh, we'll show that video and one and done. I mean, throughout the career of the band, they really hung with you guys, huh?
They did. They sponsored us so heavily. It was great. All these contests, the contest for Queen of the Broken Hearts, and especially, and we were co-hosting with them and guesting, and a couple of the guys went to Finland over Christmas to meet Santa Claus. I don't know if they ever actually met him. I think there's a rumor that might not be true, but so yeah, it was they're total supporters, and vice versa.
Did you enjoy making the videos?
I did. Yeah, they were great. I mean, who wouldn't? Have you seen some of the? Never mind.
Expensive though, right? You had to pay the money back on some of them, right?
All of them.
Well, but I mean, some of them were expensive to make, right?
Yeah. Notorious was notoriously expensive. It was insanely expensive. It was a 2-day shoot downtown L.A. It was crazy.
Do you remember the price tag on it?
Yeah, but
You had to pay it back by now.
Anyway, we had to pay it back. It was $250,000. That's
right?
what I heard. I can't believe that, but that's what they said. And back then, I don't know.
Now you could probably do it for $5,000 on your iPhone.
Well,
right?
you could, but in today's dollars, that's what, $1 million or something.
Right, probably.
It's crazy.
Derry, with video being such a big part, helping Honeymoon Suite out, did you enjoy that whole video era? Did you like making the videos? Because you guys did some pretty cool stuff as well.
We did. We ended up doing 10 or 11 videos over our career, and I tell you, man, some of them, the shoots, the 18-hour days. No, some of them are horrible. Like just sitting around, and it was a lot of work. But there were others where they were kind of fun. Once you're up and playing, fine. It's just sitting around, for hours and hours.
Yeah.
But you have to realize it's for a greater good, and when that thing comes out, it does so much for you. So it's just part of it. It's work.
The other thing that I never saw, having grown up in that era myself and been in the business at that time, that I never kind of projected or thought about was that these things would go on forever. Meaning that, like, when they were hot on MTV, whether it was New Girl Now or Working for the Weekend or whatever the video was, that was in the moment, okay, and that was like a couple months, and it was like on to the next thing. But here we are 40 years later or what have you, and these videos have become YouTube, and they're being remastered and put up, and they're finding whole new audiences and stuff. So it must be kind of bizarre for you guys to see yourself 40 years ago keep showing up in these sort of settings. It's got to be pretty cool, though, because a new generation's discovering the band.
Yeah, discovering our sense of fashion, eh? But it's good, man. I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Paul, I got to ask you, and I always ask artists who have a song that is so friggin' huge that it's just everywhere all the time, and Loverboy is in that rare air that you have one in Working for the Weekend. Can you take my audience and me for whatever time you can give us, the creation and origins and the writing of that song, and when it came together, anything in your mind trigger that this thing is going to be an anthem for long after I'm gone?
The turning point, or the proving point for me that it was probably going to do some major damage, was we played a club on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo, a small town there, and it was a meat market kind of club where very little dancing, mostly drinking and hooking up. But so we played our first 2 sets, and the dance floor was empty. We opened the 3rd set with "Working for the Weekend" long before we recorded it, and the floor was packed. And I went, "Oh, this could be good." And another time when we were just had done our demos on my little ghetto blaster. I use a metronome for the drum thing, and tick tock, and we did a real rough version of "Turn Me Loose," and we were sitting outside. Mike and me and our girlfriends were sitting outside, and the ghetto blaster was over beside the fence, and "Turn Me Loose" came on, and my girlfriend looked over me. She'd never heard it. She says, "That's the one." Just from that little bit on a ghetto blaster.
Were those songs around for a long time prior to recording them?
Not really.
They were pretty much written for the record?
Well, for a record, not necessarily for that record. I mean, "Turn Me Loose" could have been on any record, but we did a demo of it. The tricky thing about that song is we did a demo of it, and Reno did that "Fly My Way," that big, massive scream. And, okay, now you got to do that again, Reno. And that was like off the cuff. Like completely unplanned. It was just, he just sang it like that in the demo, and then he had to reproduce it, and he still has to reproduce it every night. So nice. Probably should have thought of that before you did it.
But he does it.
Yeah, it's unreal.
It's amazing that he can do it. He still does do it.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. And a huge part of the Loverboy story in terms of production, if I'm not mistaken, was the late producer Bruce Fairburn, right? He worked on a lot of your records, and really, can you talk about the involvement and input he had into the band? Because he became a guy after working with Loverboy that I think Derry, he did a Honeymoon Suite record as well.
He did the Big Prize. He did our second album. Yeah.
Right. But he was a guy that went on to have a massive career with so many other artists. But I think, at least in the U.S., people who pay attention to producers, he kind of got on our radar through Loverboy, if I'm not mistaken.
He and Bob Rock worked on Prism, which is another Canadian band out of Vancouver, and Bob Rock was the engineer at the time, and we hired them based on the Prism, the sound of the Prism album. We loved it, so we had a bunch of songs, and we went in and we recorded with those guys. The thing with Bruce is I think his real love, besides being a music producer, he's a coach. He used to coach his kids' soccer every day. He would quit every night at 5 o'clock. He would go coach a soccer game. He'd have dinner, and then he'd come back at 8 o'clock, and we'd go till 2 or whatever when we were recording. And that was his forte. He was a coach. He would get the best out of Matt. That's the most important thing, is to get the drummer cooking right off the bat. Make sure you got that in the groove, and then Matt would be done in 3 days, and the rest of us would be another 6 months later working on it. But that was the number one thing. He was a coach, very organized. That's a kind of a standard producer thing, but he was really great at it.
Yeah, and for those that are listening that aren't into that end of things and don't know who Bruce was, he sadly passed away a number of years ago, but just the stuff with Aerosmith and on and on. But if I'm not mistaken, for a lot of people, he first came on most people's radar, I think, through working with Loverboy. And then, as you said, Derry's second record?
Yeah, the Big Prize.
Yeah.
And then right after that, he did Slippery When Wet.
Little record that kind of did okay.
Yeah, you might have heard of it.
Which I think was done in his studio in Vancouver, if I'm not. Yeah, and Little Mountain still exists. It's still there, right?
It was at Little Mountain. I was recording my solo album, and Bruce was next door in the other studio, and he called me out. He says, "I wanted to play you some songs. Did you pick the single?" So he played me the Slippery When Wet, and I says, "Well, this one and this one and this one." He says, "Okay, thanks, bye."
Did you pick the right ones? The ones they went with?
Yeah.
Look at that, Paul Dean doing a little A&R on the side for Bon Jovi.
What was that?
Guys are always calling me to do that kind of stuff.
Well, but who knew? I think what we've established here today is that Paul Dean is the man behind the success of Bon Jovi at the end of the day. If he picked the wrong single, we might not even be talking about Bon Jovi right now. Record
funny.
might have done 100 copies.
That's hilarious.
I'll let you guys get out of here, but before I do, I want to get an update on what's going on now and what 2023 looks like for each of you. So, Derry, for Honeymoon Suite, what's coming down the pike? I'm assuming more shows, but anything beyond that? Are you guys working on music or?
Yeah, we are. Well, now that COVID is done, touch wood, we're like,
Well, I had it last week, so it's not totally done. No, I'm
no,
negative
I got
now.
it too. But it seems that everything is back to
It's
normal.
not stopping things, but it's out
Yeah.
there. I can attest.
We're
I-
dealing with it now.
I think people are ready to get back out to shows. We're just booking anything and everything we can because it's back to touring and live and all that. Musically, we've been working on a new album for the last 2.5 years because COVID kind of slowed things down. But it's finally done. It's being mixed, so you can look for a new Honeymoon Suite full album this year.
Yeah, that's great.
I look forward to that. Very cool. And Paul, is Loverboy talked about new music? Is that of interest to you guys? I mean, a lot of bands that have the catalog and the hits that a band like Loverboy has, it's like, well, why bother? People don't play it. It doesn't sell. We can't play it at the shows. They want the hits.
You said it exactly right. That's exactly
I've
right.
heard it before, yeah.
No, we're excited. We're going on tour with Foreigner this summer. We got 32 shows with them across America.
Yes.
One show in Toronto, and we're releasing we recorded a live concert in 1982 on film, and I carried that film around with me for 40 years, and I finally got around to putting it on digital, and I edited it together, and I did a surround sound mix on it, and we're going to be releasing that on Blu-ray.
Wow.
In time for that tour. So
you sat on for 40 years a pro shot Loverboy concert.
yeah.
Why did you sit on it for so long?
I don't know. I read a comment on Facebook or something. It says, "You guys should release this album or this concert." I went, "You're right, we should." He says, "Where's the Blu-ray of that show?" I went, "Yeah."
So that's cool. So you expect that out sometime around middle of this year, you think?
Yeah, it's got to be out before the tour. I mean, otherwise that would be sad if it wasn't.
Yeah. But the idea of new music for a band like you guys is not something that appeals to you?
Not really.
A song, maybe?
Maybe a song. I mean, we had a song out a few months back, a release. It was fun to do.
Right.
But it was in the height of COVID, and it was all done remotely,
Yeah.
Matt recorded in Raleigh, where he lives, and I was Mike and I were in Doug in Vancouver recording it together, and and Spider in Winnipeg sent him the tape, and he sent us back a tape with the bass on it. That's kind of how it was,
Yeah.
This was a year ago now. It's been a while.
You referenced a second ago, and I have your solo record, which I think is great. Is there any side to you, as you said, as a crunch guy and a guitar guy, that would like to maybe bring that side out a little bit more, maybe make a solo record again?
I've been working on a solo record for a long time, and it's pretty much done, but I'm just trying to decide when to put it out, if I'm going to put it out. I don't know. It's just one of those things, should I or shouldn't I? But I've been working on this album. I've done so many mixes on so many tracks. So I don't like that bass part, But I have the luxury. I don't have a record company or the rest of the band going, "Come on, get it done." I just go, whatever.
Well, I think. Look, as a super fan of rock music, I love when quote unquote classic bands make new music, and I think a lot of it is very good, actually. But I also completely, as I said, no, it's almost impossible to get over to the fan base and to sell and get on the radio and all that. So I think that and I understand both sides of it. I understand Derry saying, "Hey, we're going to come out with a new record, great."
That is great.
And what I said about you, Paul, like, hey, maybe you got that catalog. Who's going to want to hear it? So I think at the end of the day, at least from where I stand, the reason to do it as an artist is because it's just something you want to do, that you want to put out there, and the expectations are kept in check as to, well, it's probably not going to be on, well, there is no MTV, but it's probably not going to be on 100 radio stations tomorrow. It's not going to sell 2 million copies, but to the fans that want it and to the people that care, it's there, and it's a lot more affordable to make, too, maybe, than it was back in the day. Like you said, you don't need a label.
Can you
get direct to the consumer.
Can you say free? Yeah. I do everything on my laptop, and you're probably the same.
Yeah, but I'm writing all the time. It's like, why not? We're still a good band, and it keeps us fresh, and it's still challenging. And to put it out, our expectations are in check, but still it's nice to have new music. But you've also got the possibility of sync things. It might end up in a movie or a commercial or something, and that's pretty lucrative. I'm sure Paul can attest to that. So I don't think there's anything wrong putting new music out, because you never know where it's going to land.
Right, and that's true. Even watching football games over the weekend, there are songs that I know that are in commercials that nobody would know who the band is, but they play the song constantly. A band that I love, that kind of big, but not that big at all yet, a band called Rival Sons. And there's a song that they have, a title track from their record, Pressure and Time. It's in a Chevy truck commercial. It must have played 100 times in the football game I was watching. Now, it doesn't come up on the screen and say, this is Rival Sons, Pressure and Time, but it's out there, and it creates some awareness, and that's something that's like a 12-year-old song that all of a sudden is out there.
Can you say Shazam when the TV's playing? You
Probably.
pull it up on your phone?
Probably.
I think that's what it's called, isn't it? That app?
Yeah.
The song recognition app?
Right, or you just do it on Google.
I do that, yeah. I do that all the time when I'm watching a movie. What a great song. What is that? And there it is on your phone, you know?
See, Paul doesn't need to worry, because Paul has a piece of working for the weekend, which has been, talk about clearances. Paul, how many deals has that shown up in? Like, I can't even imagine having a song like that, like the amount of people that have come to you and wanted to license it or use it somewhere, commercials. I mean,
that's what keeps me going right now in terms of creativity. If I could get a sync, which means you get your song in a commercial, or even better on a series, Netflix series or something, would be. We've had that a few times. It's amazing.
But I would think working for the weekends everywhere, that song alone, right? I mean, that's had to be synced a million times, no?
Probably.
Don't you get the checks, Paul? You should see some mailbox money.
Yeah.
He's being humble.
He is being humble. Yeah, I mean, that's like one of those songs, man.
You know, for a songwriter, that's a wonderful thing. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like it keeps the food on the table, and it inspires you to keep going. I mean, that's your creation, and people want to use it. That's why we do it.
Yeah. Derry, you were saying you live in the U.S. for like last 20 years. You live in Illinois. So, but I'm curious for both of you guys, and I'll let you go on this. Is there a song in your catalog that, because I'm always fascinated in the differences between what people know from Canadian bands in America versus Canada. There are bands that never made it here that were huge there, like Lawrence Gowan, who's in Styx, who's playing here in a couple days. I was told that Gowan was like a huge deal in Canada before he joined Styx. We never heard of him before he joined Styx. But did Honeymoon, starting with you, did Honeymoon Suite have a song in Canada that was like a huge hit that we don't know here?
We had a big power ballad called What Does It Take? It was released in the States, and it was in a Demi Moore movie, but it wasn't huge, but it was a big, like, #1 in Canada, I would say, and that was off the Big Prize album.
Right.
That was a big song.
Right. And Paul, I mean, Loverboy's had a ton of hit singles in America, but is there a song that was real big in Canada that was not maybe a big deal here that you're aware of?
No, we broke in the States before.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, no, that's not true. I take that back. We did break in Canada, but we didn't have no songs. Everything was released worldwide.
Yeah. There's a Loverboy song that's always been like a semi-hit here that I don't even know if you guys ever play it, but it was always one of my favorites, and I don't know what if it was big in Canada, but Jump.
Yeah, we play that. It's usually as an encore song.
Is that right?
We used to open with it.
Is that right?
One time we were at Toledo Speedway back in the 80s, and we opened with the song, and of course my guitar wasn't working. And there's 50,000 people going, hello? Oh, embarrassed or what,
Oh, man. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you taking some time out, and look for Paul Dean and Loverboy. Foreigner, they're calling it a farewell tour. Foreigner guys, but does anybody ever say farewell anymore? I don't think so. You become a hologram. You've got no original members. You put up screens. I just had Carl Palmer on my show for an ELP tour, and sadly, Greg Lake and Keith Emerson are gone. He said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Putting up screens of them playing to the right and left of my drum kit." I have this mantra now: nobody ends. This is all going to outlive all of us. It's the brand, whatever the case may be. But Foreigner says they're ending, and they are, and you're going to be opening, so that should be awesome.
Just to allay any confusion, it's not Loverboy's farewell tour.
No, not you guys. You guys aren't going anywhere, but they say they are, but I don't think.
Yeah.
I went on a tour with Deep Purple in Mexico about 7 years ago. That was their farewell tour, and they're still going. So if you're still good, I don't think there's any reason to end, and both bands here are still good.
And the thing I'm sure with Derry would agree, we're doing it for the love of it, too. You know? I mean, why wouldn't you? It's just so great to play a guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. More than anything, just to get on stage and play guitar.
Yes, sir.
And Derry, how big is the schedule for Honeymoon Suite as far as touring? Do you have a lot of stuff in the U.S. lined up, or?
A few things. It's January now, so we're starting to book up the summer and the fall. And Canada's going to be really good. We're looking at maybe a festival or two in Europe.
Okay.
We did Sweden Rock last year, which was amazing.
Wow.
We're always looking and more, Monsters of Rock. I'm going to see you somewhere. But
Yeah.
there's all these Rocklahoma, all these great festivals down here that we're trying to get on.
Cool. Well, I hope to see you on them. I hope to see you both on them. It's the band's always killer. When I've had the privilege of seeing both of you guys play recently, and it's still so good. And that's always my thing. There's no reason for a band to end as long as it's still good and real and killer. And for Honeymoon Suite and Loverboy, I can say that with all honesty.
Oh,
so thank you for
man.
some time. Good luck to you. Have a great gig tonight. I'll see you up there because I'm hosting this thing. So I'll look forward to bringing you on and getting to watch the shows.
Thanks, Eddie.
All right. Thank you, guys. Paul Dean and Derry
Gerhan.
It's not that hard. It's just the spelling.
Just call me Derry.
If it was spelled Grays, I would get it. But
Shoulda changed.
Derry Gerhan. So from Honeymoon Suite. Thank you for coming by.